Apparently, I guess you have a warrant?
For what?
I'm not sure.
For voter stuff, man.
For voters.
It's what it is. I think the agents with FDLE talked to you last week about some voter fraud, voter stuff, when you weren't supposed to be voting, maybe.
You just watched a man essentially become yet another political pawn for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He is launching investigations into voter fraud, and he's going out of his way to arrest individuals who were specifically misled by the state that he leads into believing that they were eligible to vote. Now, this has to do with individuals who had previously been prosecuted and convicted for specific crimes, namely crimes involving murder and sexual misconduct. Now, through a ballot initiative, the voters in the state of Florida overwhelmingly supported allowing individuals who have served their time to be able to vote. That was the point of the ballot initiative. The people of Florida supported it. However, Ron DeSantis and the Republicans just wouldn't have it. And so they added an amendment to their state constitution that specifically excludes certain individuals based on certain crimes they had been convicted for. As I mentioned, murder and sexual misconduct. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is that the people who have been arrested were misled into thinking that they were eligible voters. And I want to give you a few more examples, but before I do, I think it's important to hear from one man who was arrested because he was explaining to the cops what had happened. Let's watch.
Hey, unfortunately, you got a warrant out, okay?
Warrant? What
Yes, sir. Want to put your hands behind your back for me?
Well, no, but no one ever really explained all that much to me. I told the guys when they came out here that I was at the driver's license place, getting my new driver's license. Yeah. The guy there asked me, he says, hey, can you vote? He says, hey, are you ready to vote? I said, no, I'm a convicted felon. I'm pretty sure I can. He goes, well, are you still on probation? I said, no. I got off probation like a month ago. He goes, well, then you can probably vote. Hey, just fill out the form, and if you can vote, then they'll give you a card. If you can't vote, then you won't. And I'm like, all right.
And there's your defense. You know what I'm saying? That sounds like a loophole to me.
So you can hear the arresting police officer say, well, that's your defense. Sounds like a loophole to me. And he's actually right about that. There needs to be proof that these individuals intentionally committed voter fraud, that they knew that they were not eligible voters and they casted ballots anyway. And based on what we're reading in reports, there seems to be quite a bit of evidence indicating that they were specifically misled. So a few more details, a little more context. The August 18th arrests, conducted hours before Florida Governor Ron DeSantis called a news conference to tout his crackdown on alleged voter fraud, were carried out by state police officers accompanied by local law enforcement. 20 people are facing up to 5 years in prison after being accused by DeSantis and state police of both registering and voting illegally. Now, there's, of course, some importance when it comes to the demographic and political identity breakdown of those arrested. Of the 19 people arrested, 12 were registered as Democrats and at least 13 are Black. That's according to analysis that was done by the Times Herald, Tampa Bay Times and the Herald. Now, they were accused of violating a state law that doesn't allow people convicted of murder or felony sex offenders or offenses to automatically be able to vote after they complete their sentence. A 2018 state constitutional amendment that restored the right to vote to many felons excluded this group. Now, this is where the details of the story and the context is incredibly important because these are people who were approached by individuals trying to register folks to vote. They asked questions about whether they would be able to register to vote, and they were given misleading and false information. As the videos further support, the amendment and subsequent actions by the state lawmakers caused mass confusion about who was eligible, and the state's voter registration forms offer no clarity. They only require a potential voter to swear under penalty of perjury that they're not a felon, or if they are, that their rights have been restored. Now, the forms do not clarify that those with murder convictions don't get automatic restoration of their rights. And one of those people who was arrested is a woman named Ramona Oliver. And Ramona Oliver shared her experience. Oliver, who served 18 years in prison on a second-degree murder charge, registered to vote at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles on February 14th of 2020. 6 months later, she updated her address and completed another registration form. After brief eligibility checks, pay close attention to this. After brief eligibility checks by the Department of State, which reports to Desantis and is responsible for clearing the rolls of ineligible voters, she was given a voter ID card both times. And guess what? She wasn't removed from the rolls until March 30th of this year, more than 2 years later.
Yeah.
So the state has misled voters or misled these individuals. And it seems like they're doing a pretty terrible job purging their voter rolls of individuals who are actually ineligible to vote in the first place. So fascinating coming from a red state with Republicans who keep crying about voter fraud, which it appears voter fraud that they enable through their incredibly incompetent Department of State.
Yeah, so there's the issue of will these people face significant jail time? And then there's the issue of why was this done in the first place? So let's tackle that first. So coincidentally, I'm sure this was done, all these arrests were done right before DeSantis gave a press conference. Well, what did DeSantis talk about in the press conference? About how he was cracking down on voter fraud. And he said, we arrested these people that were on murder charges and sex offenders. So that means you're not allowed to defend them, right? And so they were doing voter fraud, and he implicated that there was, or implied that there was a coordinated effort. If you watch the video, and they're all just the cameras on the cops themselves, right? And almost all the cops are confused. One of the cops says in one of the videos, I've never seen a charge like this, right? And so it's super authentic videos, and each person's like going to work. This middle-aged lady gets arrested in her own driveway. She's like, what in the world is going on? They're like, they say you did voter fraud, ma'am. Sorry, we got to take you in. It actually looks just like the Eric Swalwell video that just came out of the woman, the ad where the woman gets arrested for having an abortion by cops at gunpoint. And it's happening. It's happening right now. And DeSantis said, they're going to pay the price, right? So he does arrest a bunch of largely black folks and says, now look at this. If you're a felon and you're voting, which again, outside of these two categories is now perfectly legal, passed overwhelmingly in Florida. The people of Florida want them to be able to vote again. But he's sending the message, if you're a felon and you vote, we're gonna arrest you. We're gonna arrest you and make you pay the price, okay? So he's trying to intimidate people into not voting and go broader than felon. Look, we're back to the Jim Crow days. That's the bottom line here. He's going and arresting at this point perfectly innocent people. Now, when I say perfectly innocent, in terms of this charge, it's a slam dunk. It might even be entrapment. Like DeSantis might have even done it on purpose. Yeah, sure, let the two categories that are not allowed to vote, let them vote, and then we'll arrest them, and then we'll do this demagoguery and say, oh, we're gonna make them pay the price. We found voter fraud. No, you created the voter fraud. You told them to vote. But even if it's not entrapment, they need intent for the crime to be true. And obviously none of these people have intent. They had no idea that they were breaking the law. Not even close, you could tell from their reactions, and even the cops' reactions.
Absolutely. And in fact, in Lake County this year, prosecutors refused to, there you go, prosecutors declined to bring charges against 6 convicted sex offenders who voted in 2020. And the Lake County prosecutor, Jonathan Olson, was quoted as saying this: in all of the instances where sex offenders voted, each appear to have been encouraged to vote by various mailings and misinformation. Each were given voter registration cards, which would lead one to believe they could legally vote in the election. The evidence fails to show willful actions on a part of these individuals. So, I mean, again, using people as pawns like this for your political campaigning, for your messaging, for your pandering to right wingers who have already been conditioned to think that there's widespread voter fraud in the country, and that's what led to Trump losing the election. Like, it's just incredibly gross, because think about how these people likely lost their jobs. I mean, you get arrested, you get taken into custody, you're not going to work that day. And so their lives get destroyed. Also, Ron DeSantis can engage in yet another political stunt. It's absolutely sick.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.